So we are factoring some trinomials again, and trinomials just mean three-term expressions. So x squared is one term, 5x is one term, minus 6 is another term. So that's three terms. Tri like a tricycle, three wheels, three terms, trinomials. So first, when you see a trinomial, so let's say we have 2x squared plus 6x plus 4, you want to see if there's anything that you can factor out first. If we look at the numbers, I have a 2, I have a 6, and I have a 4. Those are all even, which means that I can take out 2 from each term and make an equivalent expression. If I look at the variables, I see this one has an x squared, this one has an x, this one doesn't have any variable at all, so 2 is the greatest common factor. So I'm going to take 2 out of each of these, and I'm going to make an equivalent expression. So 2 divided by x squared is equal to, or 2x squared divided by 2 is equal to x squared. 6x divided by 2 is equal to 3x. And 4 divided by 2 is equal to 2. So now I have a new expression, 2 times the quantity of x squared plus 3x plus 2. So when I'm factoring a trinomial, I always want to look at the first term and the last term. The first term here is x squared. The only way that I can get an x squared is by multiplying x and x. When I look at the back term, I have a 2. 2 happens to be a prime, so the only thing that I can multiply to get 2 would be 2 and 1. If I look at the sign, I see that the sign is positive. The sign being positive means that my signs are the same. When I look here to the middle term, I see a positive sign, so that means I have a double positive. So now I can factor this. I have x plus 2, x minus plus 1, because both of them are positive signs. Since the back term is a positive, which means sign's the same, and the middle term is a plus sign, so that's a double positive. And we want to keep the 2 following from our original equation, and we have factored this completely. That is our solution. Now let's do another one. Let's do it in red. Pushing that forward. So let's say we have 3x squared minus 6x minus 9. So again, we want to look at this expression and see if there's anything that we can factor out. We have the numbers 3, 6, and 9. Well, we know we can take out a 3 from each of them. I have x squared, and I have x, and I have no variable, so 3 is the greatest factor that we can pull from each of these terms. So 3x squared divided by 3 is equal to x squared. Negative 6x divided by 3 is equal to negative 2x. Negative 9 divided by 3 is equal to negative 3. So let me make my squared look more like a squared. Now we want to look at the back term and the front term. So we have x squared. The only thing we can multiply to get x squared would be x and x. And we look at the back term, which is a prime again. The only thing we can multiply to get 3 would be 3 and 1. So now let's look at our signs. Our sign here is negative. The only way we can get a negative number is to multiply opposite signs. So we know when we factor this, I'm going to keep my 3 coming down, we're going to have opposite signs, plus and minus. If I look at this term, the larger sign is negative. So if I look at 3, 3 has to be negative to give us a negative 2. So we'll have x minus 3 and x plus 1. And this is our solution. If we multiply everything back, we will end up with the same expression that we started with. Let's try one more. Make it a little different. So we have 3 x to the 4th minus 12 x to the 3rd minus 15 x squared. So if we look at this, we can see what needs to be factored out. If I look at the numbers, I see 3, 12, and 15. All of those are divisible by 3. If I look at the variable, I see my lowest exponent, the least exponent, the smallest one, is x squared. So I know I can take an x squared out of each of these terms. So my greatest common factor is 3x squared. So now that's going to give us a new expression. 3x squared times the quantity. We reduce this, 3x to the 4th divided by 3x squared gives us an x squared. Negative 12x cubed divided by 3x squared gives us a negative 4x. And negative 15x squared divided by 3x squared would give us negative 5. So now here we are again, another trinomial. We always want to take a look at the first term, x squared, and the last term, negative 5. So x squared, the only thing we can multiply to get x squared would be x times x. For 5, we have another prime. The only thing we can multiply is 5 times 1. If we look at the sign, we see that it's negative. That means opposite signs. So we know that when we factor this, we're going to have a plus and a minus. So we look at the middle term and we see that it's negative. If the middle term is negative, that means the larger number is negative. Here we have 5, that's going to be negative. So we would have x plus 1 and x minus 5. And that is our solution.